Alright, good morning everybody. Today we're going to do a little project. I'm going to teach you how to do a pocket carving with a textured background. Somebody wanted a sign made and it's just going to have their kid's name on it, and they pretty much told me to do it however I felt I needed to. So we're going to get a little creative with this. Alright, so we're in vCarve Pro, and the first thing we're going to do is to create a new file. And the project dimensions are going to be 20 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall. My stock is 3/4 inch thick. We're going to do our zero position at the bottom left hand corner, our XY coordinate, and we're going to create our workpiece here. So first thing we're going to do is I want a border around it, and I want it to be 1/2 inch on all sides. So we're going to click on the draw rectangle tool. So since it's 20 inches wide, my width is going to be 19.5. It's 5.5 inches tall, so my height is going to be 5 inches. So we'll create that. Close this. We'll select this. We'll use our align tool and we'll put it in the center. So as you can see, we have a perfectly centered 1/2 inch border all the way around this. Alright, so our next step is going to be to do the name. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to select this vector that I just did, this border, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to use this draw text within a vector box. We'll click on that, and this is going to bring up our text box. Alright, so the name that we're going to put in here is going to be Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L. Alright, I'm also going to want it bold so we can have a little bit of a thicker text on it. I want it centered. We're not going to worry about the size just yet because we're probably going to change it. We're not going to stretch. We're not going to do any of that. And in all reality, we probably didn't even need to use that tool, but I like to use it anyway. So there we go. We got the name up there. We're going to close this out. Now, as you can see, we have a lot of overlapping vectors, and we need to weld those all together, but we also need to stretch this out a little bit. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to select it, and I'm going to make it just a hair bigger, and then center it again. And we might end up having to make it smaller, but that's not a problem. Alright, so we want to stretch this text out, but we want to do each letter individually. So we're going to select this, and we're going to convert it to curves, and that's going to allow us to edit every single piece of this letter individually. And as you can see, it's turned to dotted lines, letting me know it's ready to go convert, or it is converted. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the M, shift click the I, and we were going to scoot it over a little bit. That looks good. They're still connected. We're going to shift click the C. I want to scoot it out a little bit. The H, scoot it out a little bit. The A, keep in mind you have to select the inside and the outside of it or it will move separately. We're going to slide it out a little bit, and then we'll select the E and we'll give it little space. That's good. Okay, so for me the spacing is just fine the way it is. Now we're gonna select this whole thing again, and then we're gonna come over here to this weld selected vectors function. Well, excuse me, we need to select the whole thing, and then we need to deselect the middles of any letters. Alright, then we'll do the weld function, and if you watch what the letters do, boom, they've all connected to each other, and it's cut out the space in between. Now you notice that they're still going to be separate pieces, and you might end up with something like this. So in a case like this, where you have an overlap, I don't know what else you would call it, you can come in here and just delete that, and then you got a perfect set of connected vectors and you're ready to go. You can check it to see if there's there's another one. So we're going to go ahead and delete that, and then we slide over here, and it looks like the rest of it's good to go. So one more time, we're going to select all the letters, and we're going to go ahead and come over here and group them back together. Now when we click on one, they all light up. All right. So one more time, we're just going to make sure everything's nice and centered. And that's just about it for the text. Now we want to create our pocket toolpath. So we need to click on the outside border or the inside of the border, and we need to shift and click on the word itself. We'll come up here to our toolpaths. Oh, there we go. And we're going to do a pocket toolpath. So the way this is going to work is on our cut depth, we're going to start at 0, which is going to be the very top of the stock, and we want to cut it down to 0.2 inches. Down here we have our clearance pass. If you don't use a larger area clearance tool, this would take you forever, especially if you use a small bit. So I usually use the larger area clearance tool, excuse me, and I usually use a 1/4 inch bit depending on the size. The size of this one, 1/4 inch is just fine. My clearing bit, I'm going to use the 1/16 inch, and that's usually what I end up using for cleaning up signs that I do like this. So first thing, we're going to select our tool, which is a 1/4 inch end mill, and we want to make sure our feeds and speeds are good. Right now I'm at 50 inches a minute and a plunge rate of 50 inches a minute. I think that's just fine, so I'm going to leave it there. Then we need to select our passes. How many passes do we want? Well, in one pass it's going to take off the full 0.2 inches. Me personally, I like to use several passes, and you just come down here and it'll break that in half. And so it's going to take off a little less than 1/8 per pass, and that's fine. One more thing also, when you look, you have your step over, and that's going to determine how far over your last pass it overlaps. You probably don't need to go down quite to 30% on something like this, but I am. I just, for some reason, I just feel like it's a good number for me to use, and I've used it a lot. It's going to take a little longer to do it because you're going to do more passes, but that's okay. So then our fine detail tool, to get into the places where the 1/4 inch can't get, we need to select, and we're going to use a 1/16 inch end mill, and this is where you can set your feeds and speeds. I'm doing this in oak, and the settings that I have up here, 48% step over. My spindle speed doesn't matter because this program doesn't control my router. 60 inches a minute and a 20 inch per minute plunge rate. Well, I'm going to change the 20 inches a minute to 50, and we'll go there. Our passes, we're doing 4 passes. Let's see, it's going to take off a little less than a 1/16 per pass, and that's good. You don't want to do any more than the diameter of the tool. If we take one off, it'll be just a hair over, so we're going to leave it at 4 passes. All right, then you want offset or raster. Offset, as you see here, basically it's going to go in a swirly pattern. Raster, it's going to go left to right. For highly grained woods, I choose the raster because the bit moves along with the grain of the wood, so any differences in the cutting height, they are going to be masked by the grain, and it's going to be easier to clean it up. The raster angle, we'll leave it at 0. It's going to go straight back and forth this way. Now, profile pass. I've noticed a few times doing some things that if I do the profile pass last, I end up getting some funky lines. So for this, I'm going to try to do the profile pass first. Not sure what it's going to look like, but we'll find out. Climb and conventional. You know, with wood, does it really matter? I don't know. I always do conventional, and I'm going to keep it that way. We'll see how it goes. And so that's going to be it. We don't need any more things changed in these settings, and we'll go ahead and calculate that toolpath. And there you can see your blue is where the tool's cutting, the red is where the bit is moving over the wood. And let's go ahead we'll reset our preview, and we will see what this looks like. There's your 1/4 inch bit doing your clearing, and there's going to be 2 of those passes. Now keep in mind, I'm doing this live. It's not a voiceover. I'm wanting to do it in real time so you can see that it really doesn't take that long to design a simple sign like this and you know, do all your toolpath work and everything else. It's pretty quick once you get the hang of it. Now we gotta wait. Okay, now the 16th bit comes in and cleans up everything the 1/4 can't, and it's done. So there you have your Michael. And you can make sure that, you know, this is going to be solid wood. I'm not color filling it, but if you want to make sure that your bits are able to reach all the different areas, you can fill it with some color, and that way you can see there's not anything that doesn't get cut because the bit doesn't fit in there. The 16th inch bit usually fits just about everywhere, and so that's going to be pretty good. Alright, so on this piece, since they don't want it colored, in oak, you know, when you do pocket carving like this in oak, the word that you carve tends to blend in with the background because it's such a grainy wood. So what I want to do is I want to put a texture in the back. So how we're going to do that is we're going to select our inside border, and we're going to shift and select our word again. Go back to our toolpaths, and we're going to go to this texture toolpath. Now, I put all these settings in prior, and really the only way to do this is trial and error. Change your settings, you know, preview your toolpath and see what it looks like until you get it the way you want it. But basically, what I've chosen is a ball nose 1/8 inch bit. My start depth is 0.2 inches because that's how deep this pocket's going to be when it's pocket carved. And then you got all these settings down here. Your max cut depth, 1/8 inch. Your minimum cut depth, and you can set that to whatever you want. So there's a variation between the textures. Your cut length, you got a max and a minimum. Your overlap, 30% is what I chose, and then you can select a variation. What that percentage is going to do is it's going to change up your overlap 53% of the time. So you're going to get different overlaps. And then step over, once again, you set your inches and then your variation. If you want an angle, you can put it at an angle. For this one, I don't. I'm just going to go straight left to right, so that's 0 angle. And then boundary vector offset. Now, what you're going to need this for is when this little bit comes in here, you don't want it to touch the edges of this raised lettering. So what I do is I'm going to give it a 100 boundary vector offset. That's going to offset from the edge of every boundary by 0.100, a little less than 1/8 inch. And to see if it works, we'll calculate it. Let it do its thing. And then we will preview that toolpath. And there it goes. Alright, so as you can see, we have a textured background with a 1/8 inch ball conical bit. We have our framed out pocket and our raised lettering. And that's it. Pretty simple. I'm not going to sit here and go through saving the toolpaths. I mean, everybody should know how to do that. But you save your toolpaths and then get out to the garage and cut it. So that's what we're fixing to do right now. Okay guys, as you can see here, we have the piece of oak clamped down to the board. If you can't tell, I stained that oak before I clamped it on there. What I'm going for is the parts that are carved away will be lighter. The parts that remain will be darker. Hopefully that'll look good in contrast after it's all done, but that's the goal for it. So we'll see how it turns out. Anyway, we're going to get started running this, and so yeah, just check it out. Okay, so we get that part done. Now what we need to do is change to our 16th inch bit so we can get the cleanup. Okay, we got our roughing pass done. We got our finish pass done. You know, you could leave it the way it is right now, or like we're going to do, you could put a texture in the background. Focus. All right. So what we're going to do now is we're going to load up that 1/8 inch conical bit, and come on, focus you. And we're going to put our texture on. I'm not going to film the whole thing, show you a little bit, cut the camera off, and then we'll come back at the end. One thing I did find that I probably should have done different is I don't think I gave the stain long enough to dry. So it looks like in some spots where, if we can focus here, we're bleeding through. Right there, it's pretty bad. Hopefully we'll be able to sand that out a little bit. But all right, well, let's get this texture on. Okay, we're gonna go take a look at the texturing and see where we're at with it. Plug your ears. All right, we're gonna let that finish running, and as soon as it's done, we'll take you back in there and we'll check it out. Okay, well, my battery's died on my lav mic, so that's why it sounds a little different, but we are done minus the finish. So take a look here, if we get some focus. Come on. Got a really nice texture in the background. We have contrasting letters and border. Look at that. Excellent. Turned out good, had no problems whatsoever. And we're going to finish it, and then we'll show you the final pictures, and that's it. So guys, once again, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.